Alright, so we're going to talk a bit about the brain and the way that it processes information. And I feel this is really important because when you understand how the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain processes information, it gives you an edge so that you can access those processes on your own. So for instance, because I am more artistic, I like to be shown how to do something instead of simply reading the directions in a book. I process it much easier, and so in another class when I'm taking notes, I may have to doodle or draw around my notes, knowing that that will help me remember it a little bit more. So let's talk about the way our left side of our brain and our right side of the brain works. They kind of work in pairings. So what one side does, the other also does, but in a different way. So the left side of the brain, the first definition, the first process is verbal, and the right side processes things in a non-verbal way. So when we are defining verbal, and I'm going to make these larger, we are using words to name, describe, and define. So everything that we're doing in school is really helping the left side of our brain become a know-it-all side. It's gathering information, you're doing vocabulary, you're learning how to spell different words, you're categorizing it, studying, memorizing, listening to somebody speak, and you speaking in turn. That's all very verbal, so our left brain just lights right up. On the right side, our right side processes things more non-verbally, which is simply, it's an awareness of things, but with minimal connection with words. So an example for both of these would be if I were to ask you to describe your worst day ever, and it was a day that really made you angry. Some of you would gravitate towards writing about it, writing me a story, getting your pen and paper out and filling up your page with words. And some of you would gravitate towards drawing me a picture of how it felt to have that worst day ever. And both would communicate the same message. Now, it doesn't mean you're one or the other, depends on the situation. So if, for instance, my husband and I go to Walmart and we purchase a camera, I'm actually a little more verbal. I want to read the directions before I use it so I know exactly how to use it, where my husband will pull it out of its packaging, start pointing and clicking and trying different dials to see how it works. He wants to figure it out without having to really read about it. All right, the next two pairings that we're going to talk about, the left side is more symbolic and the right side is more concrete. So when we're talking about symbols, this used to confuse me because I always thought that the symbols, those were pictures, and so pictures are art. But really, the left side is using a lazy method. It's just going to try to use symbols to represent information so that it can move on to the next thing. So a symbol is simply using symbols to stand for something. And I use the example of drawing out a picture. I usually draw a picture of a mountain scene with a big happy sun, and then I draw something and see if you can guess what it is. And what they are, they look like flying M's that represent birds. But those are just a symbol for birds. They're not real birds. You don't know exactly what bird I was drawing. And so when we are drawing, we need to draw in a more concrete kind of a way. And the definition for this one is relating to things as they are. At the present moment. So I would want to draw things as I'm actually seeing them. I would want to draw a specific bird and get the proportions right and the coloring of the wings right and the markings correct. I want to draw things the way I actually see them, and that's a right brain process. The next two that we're going to talk about include the left side being more temporal and the right side being non-temporal. So when you think of that word temporal, think of the word temporary, meaning a short time period. When we're talking about temporal, we're talking about time. So the left side, that process is keeping track of time. And then the right side is non-temporal. When we're kind of engaged using the right side of the brain, we are without a sense of time. So for example, if you are in a class and you are really kind of bored and can't wait for the time to go by, you keep looking at the clock, that's a left brain activity. Now, in a class, maybe art, where you are drawing and super engaged with what you're doing, it can feel like 30 minutes just went by in 5 minutes. You look up and you cannot believe that class is already over. That would be the right side of the brain taking over. So when we are trying to draw what we see, if you're really concentrating, your right brain will shift and you won't care about what time it is. Alright, the next two pairings include the words logical on the left and intuitive on the right. So how these work. Make that a little bit bigger. When you are being logical, get this out of the way, you're making conclusions based on facts. And on the intuitive side, when you are using your intuition, you are making conclusions based on feelings. So think about that for a moment. Let's take a detective, and he's working on a case, wants to see if somebody's guilty of a crime. If he's just going to look at somebody and go, you know what, you're just giving me a bad feeling, that's using his intuition. But a lot of times he's going to go and collect a lot of evidence, a lot of facts to say whether he's guilty or innocent. If we were talking about a class in school, math class is very logical. You are all coming up with the same answer in order to get a 100 on your assignment. Whereas in art, I give you an assignment, but everybody has their own interpretation of what that looks like, and you have to decide based on a feeling whether your project is complete or not. One aspect where I say take it seriously is if you are ever feeling like you're in danger, you get the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, or you're getting goosebumps. If you feel like you're in danger, that is part of your brain warning you, and it's a survival mechanism. That's something you want to pay attention to. And so, let's see. The last pairing on the left is going to be the word linear, and on the right is going to be holistic. So on the left side of your brain is more linear, and that's simply when one thought follows the next one sequentially. It's kind of like I call these my one-track mind thinkers. Again, with math, you're kind of following a formula or a process. A plus B equals C. And you're going to do those steps in order to get the right answer. When you are in your right brain way of thinking, using your right brain or R mode way of thinking, it thinks holistically, and it's looking at the big picture from all points of view. So, linear, you may be a linear thinker or a one-track mind thinker, or worked with them, especially in a group. These are the people who they come up with an idea and you can't change their mind. They're going to stick with it until the end. Where a holistic thinker is maybe taking the opinions of everyone and kind of looking at it from everybody's perspective and then going with the decision that they think feels right. I would say linear thinkers tend to be a little more goal oriented. They can kind of start and finish a project. Where holistic, I know I'm holistic, I tend to be a little more of a procrastinator, and I take a lot longer to come up with my decision. Same thing when you're doing, again, math versus art. Linear, you're following the steps to get your answer, and holistic, you're kind of stepping away from your project and taking it all in and deciding whether you need to add more to your picture to complete it or not. All of these are a part of the way we think. We're not just one side or the other, but we want to understand both sides so we can really strengthen both sides and use them both to our advantage and help us out. So for me, like I said, it helps to know that I like to work, more on the right side of my brain by drawing things. I like to get lost in a project and express myself with pictures and paintings and artwork instead of a little more verbal like math and science. But they're all good, and when you understand the way your brain works, you are getting the full advantage of your thought processes. So that's how your left side and your right side of your brain process information.